Welcome to the Closing the Wealth Gap Pain Truth Money series with your host, Raquel M.R. Thomas. Each episode is designed to teach you, discuss ways to elevate, and motivate you.
All right, we're going to get started. So thank you guys for tuning in. This is episode 2 of Closing the Wealth Gap, Pain, Truth, and Money. If you're on, share it with your followers so we can have more people join the room. But we're going to go ahead and get started because I don't want to hold you up too long. I know some of you are on your lunch break if you had to go to work today. Some of you are off. And before we get started, we want to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and our quote for the day will come from Dr. King as well. I'm Raquel Richardson Thomas. I'm your host, and every Monday we're going to meet here on Facebook during your lunch break, 12:30 to 1, and we're going to talk about closing the wealth gap and what that looks like for our communities. With the quote of the day, Dr. Martin Luther King said, let us build bridges rather than barriers. Let us build bridges rather than barriers. So we're going to talk about that and tie that into the wealth gap and how that will help us as a whole, right? I always like to go over with you all my purpose and why I will continue to jump on and share my knowledge and talk to you all about closing the wealth gap and how important that is, because my number one goal is to inspire 10,000 business owners to change their communities. And we can do it if we collectively make that decision to do so. So my goal is to inspire 10,000 minority business owners. And my goal is to do that through entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur. I love entrepreneurship. So my number one goal is to inspire through the thing that I love to do, the thing that I love to teach. I own several businesses, and they are they're not in the same industry either. So I believe in diversifying your portfolio. I believe in putting your hands in a couple pots because you never know. One could be your golden child, one couldn't. So I do believe in diversifying my portfolio. So I own several businesses, but I love to inspire through entrepreneurship. I feel that every single person has a gift and a talent that's God-given, and no one can take it away from you, whether you be a comedian, whether you be an excellent teacher, but you have a gift. And if you can focus in on that gift, horn in on it, practice, you can monetize that gift and push it out to the world, because what you have, someone needs. So I love to inspire through entrepreneurship. Based on Dr. King's quote of let us build bridges rather than barriers, I want to talk about investment groups and clubs. It's one of the number one ways we can close the wealth gap. And what does that look like? Some of us aren't quite ready to invest just yet, and that's okay. But for those of us that are making 6 figures a year or close to it, we could literally come together and build investment groups. And what do you do when you build an investment group? What is an investment group? Well, an investment group is a group of individuals who come together and they tie all their resources in. And with those resources, they go out and they focus on one particular area, sometimes multiple, but they go out and the goal is to invest, right? So what I am focused on and what I'm doing right now within my portfolio is I'm looking at real estate. So my goal is to accumulate real estate and put it back into the market. But for an investment group, what does that look like? So if you have an investment group, you have a group of individuals that come together and decide, okay, we're going to put $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 each person. So if you have 5 individuals in that investment group and you decide to put in $10,000, you have $50,000, which is more buying power than what you would have if you were doing it alone. So instead of having $10,000 as an individual, you now have $50,000 as an investment group. And one of the ways that I know for sure that we can close the wealth gap is to go out and buy our communities back, right? Gentrification is very, very popular right now. It's a word that's going around quite often, but I'm going to give you an example of what I'm speaking of. So you build an investment group, you have 10 people. And those 10 people, or 5, 10, 5, whatever the number is, but you have an investment group and you all come to the table with $10,000. Now, If you have 5 people, you have $5,000. You have $50,000 with 5 people if you all bring in 10 grand. And what you do is start looking at the communities, African American communities that are no longer thriving. And you take those funds and you go back and you start buying your communities. You start buying the community. Now, how does that tie directly into closing the wealth gap? Well, it's rather simple. If we go back and buy our communities, renovate them, put them back into the marketplace, we upgrade our community, number one. We increase the value, number 2. Number 3, we keep the community within the community. So when you go out and you start looking for properties to buy as an investment group, and I like the idea, and I'm working on an investment group right now, and what we're talking about is literally pulling all of our resources together financially and say, it's 5 of us currently. And we have someone who is really good at plumbing. We have someone that's really good at contracting. We have a business mind. We have different people in that group that will build overall what we need to have a successful investment group. And within the group, you come in with $20,000 and we have $100,000 on average. When you go to a lot of communities that are not kept well, the properties are rather inexpensive. So instead of being able to buy and invest in one property with your $20,000, you're going to be able to invest in maybe 10 properties with $100,000 on average. If you get a loan from a bank, they're asking from 10 to 20%. In most cases, if it's investment properties, it's going to be 20%. So you have 20% to put down. If you're in an area that is considered poverty or an area that is underserved, the houses are typically less expensive. So you may put yourself in a situation in an investment group where you can purchase 5 houses versus 1 house as an individual. Now, the wealth gap. The more real estate we own, the more we close that wealth gap. The more real estate we own and sell and rent out to the community, we are able to buy more houses, right? Which means we are putting ourselves in a profitability state of mind where we're buying more houses, we're flipping them, we're buying them, we're flipping them, we're buying them. But we're also pouring back into those communities that we're buying the houses in, right? We're going to create community programs for the children and for the parents. We're going to start now building that community. So we have the investment group. Right. We have now the investment group has gone out to purchase properties. They've renovated those properties, brought the property value back up. Now you go into the community and you start actually building that community. You start implementing programs that the community needs, whether it be parenting programs, educational programs, economic programs, whatever the case may be. That's how we close the wealth gap. We literally go into our communities and we start buying those communities in our investment groups. And then we implement programs that those communities need. And what does that do? That builds the community. So now the community can become a part of the investment group at some point. They become entrepreneurs. They go out and get jobs. They start refocusing how they save their money. They start rethinking home ownership. They start rethinking the process of how do we actually close the wealth gap, create a legacy. So the topic of the day is investment groups and going back to buying our communities back. And if you have a group of friends or a group of individuals that you trust, that you feel you can do business with, sit down at a table and talk about what does it look like for you all to bring to the table $5,000 each, $10,000 each, $15,000 each, and then going back into your own communities and start to buy the property that is devalued and building that property up, increasing the rental value, the property value, et cetera, you're closing the wealth gap. You're providing homes for the people in the community. You are upgrading homes that are underserved. You are implementing new programs into those communities, and that's so important. So when you go in and you buy property and you renovate and you start making money in those communities, it is imperative that you go back and invest into that community. You have to go back and invest in that community. You have to create a project where you say, okay, what does this community need? We've provided housing, we've upgraded the housing, we've come in and changed the overall perception of this community. Now, what do they need so that they can get out of these communities and grow, right? So programming becomes so very important. So I challenge you to think about ways that you can close the wealth gap, ways that you can bring yourself to the table and effectively create a plan where you're going back, creating an investment group, and or going to buy property in the underserved communities, and putting the house back into the market and putting yourself in a position to rent it or sell it. But nonetheless, going back into our communities, investing into our communities, buying our communities back, and then investing into programming into those particular communities. So that's the note for today: investment groups, and buying back our communities. One of the things that I look at is residential and commercial property. I believe that the fastest way to change the economic state of any community is to put businesses in that community, because you immediately inject tax dollars into those communities when you do that. So I'm huge on looking at communities that matter to me and trying to figure out a way to invest into those communities, where whether I'm providing economic services, where I'm teaching entrepreneurship, where I'm teaching how to save your money. It will vary, but for me, I'm always looking at those particular areas and how I can make an impact in those areas in particular. Obviously, pooling together your resources will become very important when you're talking about an investment group. You can't get around that. It makes it easier to buy. And also, you have partnerships where you can lean on someone. You don't have to know everything every time, because you have a group of people that you're working with. Partnerships becomes important no matter what you do in life. So if you're an entrepreneur, the way to get to the top is to create strategic partnerships that'll get you there. Entrepreneurs and working professionals, this episode is for you. If you're an entrepreneur and you are a working professional, you have the withal to create an investment group and go out and start buying back the communities that you grew up in, the communities that you know are underserved, creating programs in those communities. And that is one way that we close the wealth gap. Togetherness is how we do it. We build as a team. When I say to you all that it's important for me to inspire 10,000 minorities and business owners through entrepreneurship, I mean that. My number one goal is to create an environment where we're all winning, we're all building. I love to say to individuals that we're stronger together. Obviously, an investment group is stronger than one person coming to the table and buying real estate. But my number one mission is to build people who build businesses, who build communities. And I believe we can do that, and we can do it great if we do it together. Now, paying truth money. The reality is, there's a lot of pain in those underserved communities that we're talking about, the areas that you're seeing gentrification happening in. There's a lot of pain there. People are losing their homes. Taxes are going up. Individuals are coming into those communities that don't necessarily care about the community, but are simply looking to turn a profit. So there's a lot of pain when we see that type of thing going on, which makes it imperative for us to go back and buy back our communities. If you are a female entrepreneur and you are making $250,000 a year, this podcast is especially for you, because you have the power to literally go back into the community. And you don't have to be a female, so guys, I'm sorry. But we have the power to go into those communities and start buying back those communities. The truth of the matter is, when we talk about paying truth and money, the pain piece is tough to see our communities change and we be pushed out of those communities. The truth of the matter is, we have to do a better job of taking care of our communities. And for those of us who are in a position to financially go back and buy back the community, we have to get out there and do it. So you have the pain piece where we're seeing our people being pushed out of their communities. We have the truth piece where we're really not going back into the communities to invest and reinvest. So invest and reinvest, creating programs so that we can build those communities so that they're stronger. And then you have the money piece. We have the money to do it. And if we have the money to do it, we have to strategically come together and determine how we make a difference. So paying truth money ties heavily into the wealth gap. No matter what we're talking about, paying truth and money will tie directly into that wealth gap. Now, I'm going to recap again with you all the quote of today, and it's from Dr. Martin Luther King. I want to make sure we honor him. He has paved a way for us, paved a way for me to sit here and do what I'm doing right now. And the quote that I used today was let us build bridges rather than barriers. Let us build bridges rather than barriers. We're stronger together and we can build together. It just requires us coming to the table and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do, implementing a plan and moving forward with that plan. And as I end this episode, this is episode 2, Pain, Truth, and Money, Closing the Wealth Gap. I'll ask you, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? What would you do if you were not afraid? And I think for us, that's a loaded question. So for those of you, that are operating in fear, I'll say operate until you walk out of that fear. For those of us who are scared, I'll say do it anyway. This is our time to do something extraordinary. And I challenge you to operate in fear. But more importantly, what would you do if you were not afraid? What would you do if you were not afraid? That's the end of episode 2. Thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who are not following me on Instagram, make sure you go there. I do a segment on Wednesday, and it's Raquel's Business Motivational. It's a business motivational mastermind, and that's on Wednesday. So it's Raquel RT3 on Instagram, Raquel RT3, RAQUEL RT3. For those of you who don't know the website, make sure you check out our website. We're rebuilding a website that is comprehensive, and we'll have a lot of content for you on the website. The website is www.raquelmrthomas.com. I'll say it again, www.raquelmrthomas.com. Make sure you check out the website. I'm on Facebook. My business page is Raquel M.R. Thomas MBA. Again, Raquel M.R. Thomas MBA. Make sure you follow the pages. We have a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline. I thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back on Monday, so make sure you share it with your friends. We'll do a watch party as well, but I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm Raquel Richardson Thomas, and you have been tuned in with me on Closing the Wealth Gap, Pain, Truth, and Money. Thank you.
This has been a Closing the Wealth Gap, Pain, Truth, Money episode. To find more and follow Raquel, please go to RaquelMRThomas.com.